Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. First of all, sorry if I sound a little bit off at the moment. I've come back from holiday recently and picked up one of these bugs on the way through the airport. So I'm a little bit under the weather, full of cold and all that. But anyway, the holiday taught me something very interesting, which I would recommend for everyone out there. And that's, having a bit of distance from the news cycle. I've spoken before about perma-crisis, the idea of constantly being attached to the news, the latest dramatic story breaking, and it keeps you almost addicted to the news cycle. And as I say, when you're really taken away from your own stillness, I think you're normally being manipulated for some reason. In that case, it might just be to keep your eyes on the screen. We're in the attention economy and all that. One thing I noticed on holiday was having that bit of distance from the news cycle gave me a lot more clarity to see things in their whole dimension, rather than getting lost in the nitty-gritty in the day-to-day. And one thing that I think I've really noticed is the left are losing badly. And it's been interesting just scrolling through Twitter, or X, I need to call it X, and seeing how many people get angry about the behaviour of the left, and understandably. I'm not saying they've covered themselves in glory recently, but I sometimes think when we're annoyed by their behaviour here on the right, or just the dissident right, or whatever we call it, we're sort of getting lost, if you like, in that dualistic battle again. Because at the moment, I think things have really shifted in quite a big way in the past couple of weeks. And I think, again, it's been because of the behaviour of the left. Now, when all the Charlie Kirk stuff happened at first, it seemed they were desperate, the left-wing media, the liberal media, to push the blame on the right in any way they could. Blame MAGA. They were trying to blame Nick Fuentes and his crowd. And they didn't really have any evidence at all to do this. In fact, all the evidence pointed to the exact counter, that the shooter was this transy type, or was dating a trans person or something like that, and was against Charlie Kirk for his quote-unquote hate. But the clear message was, from that, liberal type milieu, that you're the bad guy. They were really trying to shift it round. You had the newsagents types, James O'Brien, those types of people, really doing their utmost to paint MAGA or right-wing people as somehow deserving of this. And then you had the whole thing with the talk show hosts. I think Jimmy Kimmel got fired for some, comments about Charlie Kirk. And they all came out in unison. It was really interesting, because the talk show hosts are the most obsequious false people there are. They really are the sort of front line of the liberal regime, the guardians of leftism, if you will. And it was so interesting seeing them respond to this, seeing the ire turned back on them, and how they just couldn't handle it. And all of a sudden it's all fascism, even though it's what they've been doing, for the past 10 to 15 years. And I know it's very frustrating when you see the media basically just manipulate people en masse. But as I keep saying in recent videos, we have to remember in the grand scheme of things, it's working out quite well, because it's exposing the left for what it is. I've said many times on this channel, I don't think all left-wing people are bad. I think some of them are naive. I think some of them are well-meaning boomers. But in principle, behind a lot of their lovely liberation talk is a very violent strand. And there always has been that. And now it's being revealed. And that is going to turn more and more people away from it. And I don't even think the right has to do anything. I'm not even that impressed with the right at the moment. Certainly not impressed by Farage and Reform. Not particularly impressed by Trump. I don't even think the right voice has been found politically yet, because what we're experiencing, in my view, is an epochal shift out of globalist liberalism. Now, that doesn't mean globalist liberal power is going to let go, it's going to hold on to it, but as I keep saying, it's going to be mask off, it's going to cling to its power, manipulate, lie, be violent, do anything it can to cling on to power, because the spiritual shift is moving now. We're out of the era of the liberal boomer. The liberal boomer is going to die, to be blunt, in the past 5 to 10 years. They're old. Their world is going now. The post-60s dream, utopian liberal dream. We're entering a new world now. And unfortunately, to my mind, it's going to be quite balkanised until you find the true tradition again to lead things through. And this is why, I think it's worth saying, we have time. I keep seeing and comments on my channel and others, this idea we don't have any time, we've got to act now. We have time. People often point out Spain and the situation they went through, Islamic Spain, hundreds of years, right up to the Basque country. They were taken over and they still won over in the end. I don't think things are going to get nearly as bad as that. But we do have time, we really do. It's a case of awakening is the issue, not time. And what we're awakening to, I think, is the important thing. This is why I personally, and I have seen a few others recently, trying to sound this note of being calm, rational, rooted in something deep, having intellectual rigor in your arguments, understanding politics, philosophy, spirituality, religion, having a very firm backdrop with big, deep roots, so you can be sensible and deep and offer an alternative path that's real, rather than the sort of sensationalism and anger and I just want to destroy the left type stuff. Because you get loads of that now, because the algorithm likes it, especially on YouTube and X and other mainstream social media. I don't think that's particularly helpful, because it's too easy to caricature, and very often it's too easy to disprove. But I do think it is the time for a deeper awakening, something more traditional. I think this is why I've spoken about it before on the channel. I almost see it in my own family. I'm 39, and I've got this bond with my Yorkshire grandmother, who's in her 90s and very trad, conservative worldview. But her and my worldview is almost identical, and it's almost, you can see my mother and father, sort of classic centre-right, centre-left, have got the more sort of boomery worldview, the boomer liberal worldview. Me and my grandma don't. And you can see it's almost gone full circle now. And I think Gen Z are going to go even a further stretch with that. And as things get more chaotic, I think that will be revealed more and more. But as I say, I don't think the Farage and Trumps are the type of people to lead that reawakening. I think it's going to be something deeper. And when, this movement really comes to maturity, cometh the hour, cometh the man, that will happen in the next 10 to 20 years, I believe. But anyway, the core point I'm getting at in this video is, if you look at the optics from the top, the big news, what's happened recently, we have Charlie Kirk's wife on stage, in front of thousands of people in this very American, I guess you could call it a wake for Charlie Kirk, or memoriam. And the big news is she forgave the killer of Charlie Kirk. Now, I've seen already a lot of people don't like that, and they think somehow that means she's saying it doesn't matter, or you don't pursue justice. I'm going to do a video on the sister channel, the spiritual channel, about what forgiveness really means. I was actually very touched by her speech. I thought she did very well, very, very trying circumstances. But I'll just say, for a note here, when someone forgives, it doesn't mean you're saying it's okay. It's almost, I think some people understand the Christian message that way. That's not what it's saying. And we haven't been helped by liberal interpretations of Christianity. It doesn't mean you don't pursue justice. And that justice can be severe, The reason you forgive is to unburden yourself of the poison. So I can say in my own life, I had some early life challenges, very angry with certain people. And I realized in later life, these early life experiences are living inside of me, like demons. And I won't let them go, because they've become such a core part of my identity. There was such an injustice I felt. And until I was willing to let go of them, I actually couldn't even forgive. I had to pray for the willingness to forgive. And for me personally, after 2 weeks of doing that, it went. I couldn't believe it. It was one of my first major spiritual experiences. And then I was free. And I really was free. And then my identity was freed with it. I was no longer tied to the past. It's something more like that's why you forgive. It doesn't mean that you don't pursue justice. And that justice, again, can be severe when it has to be severe. And that justice may well be severe for Charlie Kirk's shooter. But my point here is that the optics coming out from the right, and this is the mainstream right, which I'm not really that fond of, it's all fireworks and drama. But still, the optics were that of peace. They were that of maturity. That of a woman whose husband has been assassinated, going deep into her faith to find forgiveness. That's quite powerful optics for the average person. And again, there's this great picture of Donald Trump comforting Charlie Kirk's wife, and this is just an easy win for Trump, because I actually thought Trump's speech was pretty poor. I only listened to half of it because I thought, I can't bear this. Because he started talking about government policy, and they've got big announcements on autism. I was thinking, it's not the time, Donald. It's about Charlie Kirk now, focus on the mission at hand. But he's Trump, isn't he? So it's the way he is. But the point is, it's an easy win for him, because he comes out looking humane, comforting a grieving wife. And again, this is because the behaviour of the left have been so awful. In fact, Trump's benefited a lot from that. The left being so appalling at times, it makes you sympathise with Trump. And as I've said Many times I'm more right-wing romantic. I don't like this sort of modern conservatism, Thatcherite type stuff. It's not me at all. And he's very much of that ilk. But it makes you sympathise with him when you see the behaviour of the counter side. And again, same thing in London. We had a Trump protest recently. Basically a load of white boomers on your screen. I think you can see one Muslim going by. I'm not quite sure why he's calling out Trump and Farage as fascists. I mean, is Islam so wonderful and tolerant? I'm not quite sure it is. It's more a sort of fascist theocracy, isn't it? But anyway, aside from that, these are just naive, liberal boomers. It's the end of their worldview coming through. Their fantasy of how the world really works, just the evil right-wing white Western male, if we can just deal with our own bigotry, it will be a utopia. Of course, it won't. It's going to be quite nasty, and those people will need a lot of help when things break down because they are not prepared. But as we're learning as well from the more bird's eye view, when people use the word fascist on the left, as they do for Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, one, they don't know what it really means. They don't know what fascism is as political ideology. What it means is you're evil. And I've said many times, this is the progressive moral theology. Fascism is basically Hitler. Hitler is Satan. Ergo, if you attack a fascist, like the guy who killed Charlie Kirk thought, and I do believe the mainstream story is real, personally. I have a bit of chat about that with some fellas on the Substack. I don't believe it was a conspiracy. I think it was as it seems. But when we understand that this is how people are brainwashed, I experienced it at university. You're taught to think that people who think outside the liberal frame are evil, twisted, disgusting people. And you need to overcome them by any means necessary. And well, now we're witnessing the results of that. So they don't even know what fascism is, number one. It's just a word for them that means pure evil. But effectively, when someone says it now, it's a call for violence. And this is why there's this clip from Spitting Image going around where they were painting Elon Musk as a fascist. It's a stupid clip because Spitting Image was supposed to be biting satire at one stage. Now it's basically just lame regime propaganda. They paint Elon Musk as a Nazi. They don't even take off his accent well, which isn't the hardest accent to imitate. He just has a traditional South African accent, and he's basically trying to start a riot. But everyone knows the Tommy Robinson March was relatively quiet. That's what they're riffing on in the clip. But you see, this is the reason they do this is to try and put that ire on you of the normie, to try and make people think that you're evil, that you deserve it. And mother of the house, this political genius of Britain, Diane Abbott, buys right into it as well. Here's her calling for violence against, quote, fascists.
So we cannot allow the fascists to win. We cannot allow Donald Trump to win. We cannot allow Nigel Farage to win. We are going to show them, whether it's verbally, whether it's actually physically contesting with them, we are going to show them that they're not going to win, they can't win, and the British people are better than that. Thank you very much.
Firstly, it's an odd thing to say that Farage won't win when he's dominating the polls and Trump won't win when he's already won the election twice, 3 times, depending on your views on the 2020 election with Biden. But the point here is that, again, here's the left being violent, framing their opponents as pure evil, and then calling for violence. Of course, nothing will happen to Diane Abbott. As I say, when I go on holiday, when you go on holiday, you're looking over your shoulder. You're thinking, will the regime crack down on me because I speak against the liberal system? That's the way it is for us. For them, they can just call violence on people with impunity. Nothing happens. But the point here is that even if it did get violent, and again, to Starmer Stasi, I'm not saying I want violence, not promoting violence, not saying that anyone should do anything violent. But if they did get violent, they do not want that smoke. The left are not going to beat the right if it comes to physical violence. In America, the right have the guns. In the UK, there's a few Jez we can gym bros. But broadly speaking, the good old boys are on the right, and they're experienced in physical combat. So they're going to win. And you should be thankful they're not being violent. And there's always one or two, I know, The Guardian and the BBC will put front and centre. But broadly speaking, the right is not being violent. And it doesn't have to be violent because the left is revealing itself right now. When I say the left, to be fair, the left is richer than what it presently is manifesting as. I don't think all of the left is violent.
But what it's presently manifesting as is violent. This kind of woke-infused, almost manic ideology it has, that anything outside of its frame is evil. It's sort of social media age leftism mixed with sort of critical theory. And it is violent at its core, and it's being revealed. Now, as I say, it seems to me, and I know a lot of people don't like this because they want to take action, but I often think, it's an illusion of action, because you just get caught out by the system. It wants you to react angrily, mad, because it can point the finger, that's the bad guy. But right now, very slowly, that finger's turning back on them, and they are the bad guy. And there is an awakening going on, I think, across the Western world, that this left-wing ideology, number one, is rooted in a fantasy. This fantasy of mass immigration and multiculturalism, that all you need is just, your day-to-day marketing job, and this embrace of everything, being tolerant towards, every aspect of LGBTQ ideology, to not mind that you become a minority in your own country. These things aren't going to work. They're going to lead to trouble. It's not hate to say that. It's just obvious. Once you take the shackles off and take the blinders off, you can see it. And it's being revealed, number one. So they have to up the ante. You're evil. You're toxic. You need to be taken out. But of course, the problem again is that they're just showing themselves up even more. Number one, their ideology is basically nonsense. And number two, in order to defend that nonsensical worldview, they have to get violent and aggressive. And we're seeing that from the system as well, I think, at this point. But my point is, as I said earlier, the best way to combat this is to be deep, is to be rooted, is to know who you are, your history, your people, your religion, your tradition, to go into these things and stand in them. And you will, the conscious energy, if you like, of the culture will turn to you. And I think that's already happening. And this is why I'm quite wary of some of the manifestations on the right at the moment, because I don't think they're honouring the depth that's on offer here. And of course, on top of that, if you fall into that sensationalism and anger, the system will just use you, Really what we have to be doing is providing a valid counterpath right now, which speaks to something real and deep that's beyond politics, actually, I think is the key. That's why I often speak about the tradition in its depth. But anyway, broadly speaking, this chaos we're experiencing, I've said it many times on the channel, it's horrible. Horrible things happen, like what's happened to Charlie Kirk. Brutal, appalling. But that's chaos. Wild things happen, and when they happen, you have an opportunity for evolution, growth, realization on the political and spiritual level, or you get suckered back into that degenerate world of warring and lost in your emotions. And it seems to me that's where we're at in the Western world right now. We're entering an epoch of deep change, and it's going to be challenging, and the liberal system is not going to give in. But we will win, because we're rooted in something deeper if we can recognize that in its totality. We're talking to something transcendent when you truly understand it. This left-wing ideology is just that, ideology. It's all it is, and it has a fake moral system. So again, this is why I think, broadly speaking, it's a difficult time. I understand that. It's not easy with the system the way it is. But things are moving in the right direction. And then when that spiritual energy grows, that shift happens, cometh the hour, cometh the man. It's the preparation for the true king in symbolic language. And just to continue on that symbolic theme, the reason, to my mind, why liberals are getting violent at this point is because they're without the archetypal father, just in a fatherless home where the youngster grows up and can't quite understand himself and tries to prove himself by being aggressive, by striking out against the world because he's got no firm hand to guide him. It's exactly the same with the state of the modern West, especially the liberals. But again, when the true king comes, these things can be corrected and we can have a positive future. As always, these are my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. The sister channel is linked below, as is a Substack. So do check those out, and speak again soon. Take care.